as you think about the last 50 years or so, I feel, and I think a lot of our audience feel, that the opposite point of view, the original thought of money as you define it, has been defined in general economics, has become more ingrained. And so it's actually become harder to get to this place. Now, I'm curious from your perspective as somebody who has run businesses, has interacted with business leaders, has been part of large organizations. Is it just our perception, or do you feel like society actually, and maybe at the business community level, has actually become more cynical and more oriented towards the old definitions of success and profit, and it's actually exacerbating the underlying problems that you've identified here? Because it certainly seems like there's been decades of just cynical profit at all costs without consideration to people, society, the planet. That's what I think people feel, which is why your message is welcome, I think, by many. But there's probably a portion of our audience that feels like they just have not seen this in action anywhere in their lifetime.
You're absolutely right. And it's interestingly, it started 50 years ago. I don't know if you know, the Jubilee is 50 years. So it's pointing at, and what happened was Nixon broke the link between the dollar and the gold standard. So whilst what I'm talking about is a people standard where the money is linked to the number of people, a gold standard, even though they weren't playing by the rules and there was far more dollars than there was money in the stores of gold. Um, the Once that link was broken, the shackles were off, and whether it was Reagan or Thatcher, since then, money has completely been unleashed. You think about it, this was in my life. I've seen it happen, and money has become. That's what you're sensing. It's become meaningless, and therefore things like casino banking, derivatives, all this nonsense, which is creating huge amounts. I mean, no one even knows. They've stopped measuring the money. There's so much of it. Now, this is trillions, gazillions of money, which is futile and meaningless. And therefore, what started to happen is money lost its purpose. And I think after the Second World War, there was a feeling of having to rebuild family and community. In the UK, the National Health Service the benefit system started because they wanted to care for each other, but that only lasted for about 20 years. And then the 70s, you get the move back from the we to the I. And that's what we've lived with for the last 50 years since Reagan and Thatcher and all the various presidents and prime ministers in between. They all are following the same paradigm, and they're making more and more money. And it's selfish. I'll be straight with you. It's all about me. And I'll be honest with you, it doesn't lead to meaningful life. Having more money in your bank account is meaningless. So what's happened is the profit motive has proliferated. Um, what we had before were people who were responsible business people. Yeah, they may have run, they ran businesses and looked after their staff. And at my father's factory, they loved their people. I remember a story when the Christmas fund was run by one of the fitters, and he actually stole the money. And my father felt so bad for his workers. He actually repaid all the money to keep. They were family. It was a different relationship. So there was much more relationship within the workplace, and that was unfortunately crushed by when the unions were crushed in Thatcher's times and then Reagan's time. They just lost these relationships, which is so important. So we've had 50 years completely right, where relationships have been damaged, people have focused more and more money, and because the link with the gold standard was broken, there was no constraint. So what's important to understand, Brian, is how money is created. And money is literally created by the banks. Okay, not the central banks, the actual commercial banks. 97% of money is actually literally lent into existence. They don't need deposits. They literally create the money, and that people don't understand, because these are private organizations that literally are allowed to create as much money as they want. And of course, they use that money to lend as security as they can. And therefore, if they lend on an asset, which is whether it's a debt with debt financing or real estate, commercial, residential real estate, they have security. So they lend more and more money on these assets. And that pumps up the asset prices. So what we've seen, and it pumps up, by the way, business prices. If you look at a VC world, the private equity world, that's what they do. All they do is gearing. Their game is uplifting the price of a business by putting debt in, and that simply increases the price. So what we've done is we've pumped up asset prices, whether that be real estate, commercial and residential, or the shares and stocks and shares. They have all of those have been inflated in prices, and that means that money is being used to actually inflate assets, to inflate shares, and or to inflate consumer prices. And that's actually theft from everyone else, because people who haven't got assets, who haven't got property, who haven't got shares, are being stolen from. And that's where we've got to now. That's why there's so much disillusionment with the system. That's why we had social unrest in the UK. You know, these riots are not criminals. There are obviously there's an element of people who exploit it, but it's because people are not being listened to, and the system is failing, and that's why people are sensing there's a need for a reset, and 50 years is a jubilee, so we need to start to think about a new vision, which is the managed journey, which I'm happy to explain more about. But it's necessary because the paradigm is not looking after people. People are not being cared for, nor is nature. The answer is not net zero, by the way, which is effectively business using it for its own end. The answer is to go back to understand the land, understand agriculture, to start to regenerative farming, stop using insecticides, stop tilling the ground, stop there's lots of techniques which actually start to combine nature, allow the animals to graze on the soil. There are things like that which are real, which change the way we operate, rather than net zero, which is an artificial target that no one understands.